Thank you, Abby, and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining the latest installment in our webinar Thought Leadership series. So for those of you who are interested in seeing some of our past webinars, please make sure you visit our website at avaap.com. Under the Workday practice, you'll get access to some of our past topics. In today's webinar, we'll be covering an innovative solution for the two-column transcript in Workday Student. But before that, by way of introduction, my name is Mark Bonachea. I am the Workday AMS practice lead, and my team, the AMS, or the Application Management Services team, we're responsible for all of the live Workday customers that Avaap is currently servicing. We've helped about 30 customers this year across a number of different services, including things like update and release management, diagnostic and optimizations, enhancement projects, and of course, our lifeline day-to-day support services. Quick intro into Avaap before we get started. Avaap was actually founded in 2006 and has approximately 600 consultants worldwide. We have offices across North America, EMEA, and Asia Pac, and we are considered a Workday boutique partner. We've been certified in serving our Workday customers for the last 5 years, and we proudly hold all 3 badges with Workday, including being a Workday advisory partner, an AMS and support partner, and a services and deployment partner as well. We've got certified resources in HCM, financials, and of course, students. We've serviced well over 300 clients since our inception across various platforms and ERP softwares, including Workday and Infor. And we focus our services in a wide range of industries, including healthcare, government, commercial, and of course, higher education. Let's take a quick look at today's agenda. So we're going to start off by doing a quick introduction of our panelists and our presenters today. Then we'll take a deep dive into the transcript itself, looking a little bit at its history and how it's used within Workday. And then we'll present to you what our innovative solution looks like. And then at the end, we'll turn it over to our panelists, turn it over to all of you to ask questions, whether it's about the transcript or any areas of student that our panelists can answer. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and go through our presenters today. And John, you want to start us off?
Yep, thank you, Mark. My name is John Tenney. I've been at Avaap for a little over a year now. 19 years supporting student ERP systems, the first 14 supporting PeopleSoft Campus Solutions, specifically financial aid, the best part of any student ERP system. I've been in the Workday ecosystem for 5 years. I started at Workday in 2015, and now I'm at Avaap. And like I said, I specialize in financial aid and student data conversion. With that, I'll pass it off to Carter.
Carter, I think your video is on, but not the audio.
Yep. So my name's Carter Cochran. I have about 19 years of higher education experience, 13 of which is focused on data analytics and reporting. I've been in the Workday ecosystem for about 7 years, both as a client and a consultant. They specialize in numerous technical and functional product areas, but largely I'm focused on advising and student reporting at the moment. And with that, I will pass it over to Josh.
Thanks, Carter. My name is Josh Kelly. I've been with Avaap for a little over 2 years. Got 13 years in higher education. I've worked in on the other side, on the administrative side, in enrollment management office, which was primarily admissions. I also worked in a registrar's office and then an office of data analytics. I did that for about 7 years before I transitioned into consulting. And the entirety of my 6 years of consulting have been in the Workday ecosystem. So I've been fortunate enough along the way to pick up a couple of certifications. And my specialty here in our practice is in the core and the student records product areas. And with that, I will pass over to Analia.
Thanks, Josh. My name is Analia Morrow, and I come specifically from the higher education institution area with 28 years experience in administration from college registrar to AVP of enrollment management. Also had faculty and other consulting experiences with a large consortium. But most importantly, my Workday experience started as client number 1 for the student product with Workday, and I was administrator at the institution that was first to go live with the recruiting and admissions product. So that was a really exciting experience. As you can see, we've only brought a small subsection of our team to talk about the topics for today. But it's important for you to know that our student leadership team has about 16 years on average of higher education experience. And we were on approximately 75% of the student Workday deployments to date. So our experience is wide and deep. With all those experiences, we've spent a lot of time brainstorming the challenges that we had on campus, how we could leverage those experiences, those pain points that we had personally, and also what we're hearing from our clients as we walk through deployments, either on the client or the partner side. What are some ways that we could come up with creative solutions? And that's one of the ways that we got to the transcript solution that we'd like to talk to you about. So I'm going to turn it over to Carter Cochran, who's going to walk us through the evolution of the transcript and how we got to our solution for the 2-column transcript that we'll talk about today.
Thanks, Analia. I'm just going to quickly mention that folks that either to post questions in the chat or hold them to the end, we've left an allotment of time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. With that, today we're going to focus on looking at transcripts and how they evolved over time, how they fit into the student's life, and some thoughts on how we can think differently about them in the future. To start, we're going to take a look back at some examples of transcripts over a 90-year period of time, starting in 1930. So here's an example of a transcript from 1936. The data on this transcript is exactly what you'd expect to see, but the formatting is a little different than today. Most notably, the transcript is handwritten. However, and while I've listed some of the key differences and similarities here on the slide, the overall takeaway here is that the transcript content from a transcript produced almost 90 years ago is largely the same as today. It contains grades, course titles, student biodemographic information, the college name, etc. To put that into perspective for a moment, I'm willing to wager that no one on the call today was alive when this transcript was produced. So jumping over to 1950, we can see that the biggest difference is the use of type instead of handwriting. So while there are still some handwritten elements here, and the transcript is a bit easier to use because it takes advantage of technology available at the time, it still carries over the majority of formatting options from the past. Jumping over to 1960, we're going to let's go there. Apologies. So jumping over to 1960, we can see that nothing really has changed over the last 10 years. In fact, when we make a major jump over to 1990 to the 2000s, we don't see a large amount of advancements here either. The biggest change in the transcript here is the transcript is produced using an ERP, which adds a level of security, makes the transcript easier to produce in theory, but the output looks antiquated, and other than the basics, it doesn't provide a large gain in usability for someone that works outside of the institution. And we kind of see that that formatting has been preserved in the present. So when we arrive at today, there aren't many changes. The biggest difference in today versus 10 years ago is the prevalent use of secure paper. In the past, secure paper is used by some institutions, but today it's really the standard just about everywhere. All of this is to say, overall, transcripts have made some improvements in legibility and formatting, but these changes are more a result in improvements in technology used to produce the transcript, and not necessarily changes made to improve the transcript itself. So to take a step away from transcripts for a minute, I'd like to point out that other documents that are similarly important have, in the data that they contain, have changed. Credit reports are one example. Credit reports from the 1990s were pretty difficult to read. However, as we all know today, credit reports are used for many different purposes and the availability and importance of understanding the information on the credit report has dramatically increased. As a result, credit reports changed dramatically in a short period to provide customers a more user-friendly document that they could decipher on their own. So, whoop-de-doo, why does that all matter? It matters because transcripts are used for many different ends. In the past, and today to a large extent, transcripts are used for students to get degree and field of study verifications, have their GPA and honors verified by potential employers, and have their coursework evaluated by graduate or transfer institutions. However, moving into the future, and we've already seen some of this today, we know that transcripts are going to play a role in data-driven recruitment when students enter the workforce, where skill-based metrics, non-academic activities, and non-traditional academic achievements are going to play more a role in recruiters sifting through candidates for job openings. However, the ugly truth is that we as higher educational professionals have challenges to overcome to really make improvements in transcripts. Some notable changes in staying current, some notable challenges in staying current have been difficulties to represent all the relevant data. Student data is found in many different sources today, like CRMs, student information systems, other ERPs, instructor systems, course syllabus, and course evaluations, just to name a few. And relaying that information and the meaning of that information to parties outside of the institution has been difficult. For example, a student that has received an A in nearly all of their courses and a sole B in one, was that instructor a tough grader? Did the student struggle with that course subject? Did other students perform similarly? What does that abnormality really mean? Further, and in my experience, I've seen that transcript rubrics are not always current. There are a lot of grade changes and changes in grade definitions that accumulate over the life of the institution, and often it's not possible to cram all of it on the back of a transcript page, or even update it as regularly as it should be. In the case of secure paper, paper can cost the institution a lot of money, and simply disposing reams of transcript paper when there are updates to a grading rubric isn't cost effective. Luckily, Workday offers the ability to integrate with many third-party systems. Workday provides the means of gathering the data needed to present a more holistic picture of the student's achievements over the course of their life cycle with the institution. Workday itself provides two transcript formatting options, a one-column layout and a two-column layout. These layouts are designed in an XML formatting tool called BERT, or Business Intelligence Reporting Tool. It's relatively easy to use and brings a modern formatting elements to the transcripts like color, different fonts, backgrounds, watermarks, and more. The Workday transcript layout works as follows. In the one-column data, it flows as expected from the top of the page to the bottom in a single page. And multiple orientations such as landscape and portrait can be used, but are static from one page to the next. Or in other words, if your portrait page is first and your landscape page is second, the data lands on these pages is always in that orientation. Moving on to the two-column layout, the data flows a bit differently than we might be used to. Instead of flowing like a newspaper where data goes from the top of one column to the other, it zigzags across the page left to right, as we can see here, where the data moves from fall 16 to spring 17, left to right, and then repeats going back down underneath fall 16, and then moving back over to the right as the transcript goes forward. While Workday's out-of-the-box solutions for the transcript are good and provide many modern formatting options, we know that clients might want to do more with their transcripts to really push what's possible and what's displayed in terms of data. For this reason, Avaap has created a separate transcript solution that offers as many that we offer as an implementation or post-production service. We lovingly refer to this as Ernie. Our solution provides the ability to use many of the formatting options that we see on websites today, which opens the door for a plethora of options, not just with formatting, but also the data, what data is available in the transcript and how it's interacted with. The Avaap solution is dynamic, so it can respond to the data it receives and formatting accordingly. For example, if we want to go from portrait to landscape and back again in a single student's transcript, we can. It's easy to maintain for the institution, so if there are any changes that are required to keep the transcript up to date or with the times, those are easy for the institution to maintain. It's also worth mentioning that while this solution isn't provided directly by Workday, it only uses Workday tools, so you're not having to contract out to a developer just to maintain your transcripts. So the example on the previous slide is of a simple transcript with many of the formatting and data elements we've used, we've seen in the past over the last 90 years of transcripts. However, here we're seeing the Avaap solution can really transform the transcript to show much more of a holistic view and modern view of the transcript. By leveraging the power of Workday, we're able to bring in elements like summary data, and call that out specifically. So the student's GPA and class rank, skills they acquired, like language proficiencies in Spanish, internships completed or in progress. Again, we can aggregate the data and show metrics that highlight the student's overall accomplishments. We can embed links to relative details on the web when the transcript is viewed on as a PDF or elsewhere on the computer. We can use different colors and fonts and bring your school branding to life in the transcript. And we can also hook into social media links, like LinkedIn or just an email link for the student. All this is presented in an easy to read and understand format that brings modern formatting options to the table for transcripts. It's also worth noting that while I don't have an example here on the screen, we are able to produce different types of transcripts for different audiences. We can have an unofficial transcript for your faculty that's specific to their needs and what they need to get off the transcript. But we can also provide that traditional unofficial transcript that might be to a much broader audience that resides outside the institution, like potential employers or other institutions. While these are some of our thoughts internally on the way to improve college transcripts, we'd like to leave you with some thoughts to think about on your own. What data do you have on your institution's transcripts now? What data is missing from that? How easy or user-friendly is that data represented? Can it be interpreted by a third party? How can your transcript be modernized to do more for your students? So in closing, I'm going to hand off to Abby Newman for Q&A. I hope everyone found this presentation insightful. Thank you for coming. Abby?
Thanks, Carter. It's definitely a great development, and we're super excited to learn a little bit more. I definitely learned something. We did have a couple of questions come up during the presentation. If you have questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat box or in the Q&A section, and the team will answer them. So with that, I'll start with a couple of questions I have. What are some of the tools needed to develop this solution? Any expertise outside of Workday?
So I'll go ahead and answer that. In terms of tools that we use, we're mostly using Workday Studio as well as the Workday UI. We have the option of coming at the data needs on the transcript a couple different ways. One, we can handle it inside Studio, but if a customer has Workday Prism, we can leverage that as well to really organize the data and make it easy to manage in the future for the institution. In terms of outside of Workday expertise, other than you know, your industry knowledge and knowing your audiences, you won't really need much expertise outside of Workday. And as part of the services that Avaap offers, that's something, you know, we help get you up to speed with in terms of how all this is working and what needs to be done to maintain it.
Thank you. Another question is, was it difficult to fulfill the 2-column format required by most schools?
No. So the way that we've put together our solution, we're really taking advantages of some web technologies that already exist that support 2-column newspaper formatting. So we're able to create that layout pretty easily.
Thanks, Carter. Can you provide other examples of enhancements that you have developed using Workday tools?
We've created a number of enhancements for Workday, and especially in terms of the tooling and how we go about our implementation services so that we can more seamlessly organized and user-friendly for the customer to go about their Workday implementations.
Yeah, and you know, it's, you know, it's very specific regarding the client, and this is Josh here. You know, but one example of a solution, we won't get into the details, but you know, attendance tracking. So that's a case where we're entirely using Workday tools. And Carter, feel free to chime in here, but that's an example of another type of solution that we're using with the Workday tools.
Yeah, exactly. That's another one where we're using Workday Studio to deliver attendance tracking that provides, you know, kind of all the bells, lights, and whistles that people are used to seeing in an attendance tracking system, not just simply marking the student as attended for some unknown denomination of time within the course, but able to track day-to-day attendance for the student and provide those reports to any interested party, whether it's advisors or deans or faculty members for their own purposes.
And not to beat this question like a dead horse, but you know, another big another enhancement we're trying, it's not an enhancement, but something we're working on is state reporting. So that need is very specific. The requirements vary, obviously, you know, state by state, but we're largely undergoing an effort to utilize the report writer, and in some cases we'll be using, you know, Studio, but you know, another case of enhancement in which we're utilizing Workday tools.
Next question, how will students with multiple records, undergrad, grad, appear in this new format?
Well, the answer to that is really up to you. So how do you want them to appear? Because we can really you know, go to town with how we display the transcript data. So if you guys want that presented as as one document running from one column to the next, and it just starts the graduate record and it's kind of embedded all together. We can do it that way. We can break it out so that it starts a new page. We can even change the format altogether so that someone knows that they've hit a different part of the record. You know, I know some institutions for their undergraduate transcripts, they use a portrait style layout, but when they have their graduate transcripts, they're in a landscape format. So we can toggle over to landscape to show things like descriptions of what the student's dissertation was on, you know, a brief summary of that data, and present that so that it's not crammed into a small space on a portrait, that it's easier to read in the landscape format.
Next question. So this is not a BERT solution, correct? How are templates created and developed?
Oh, that's part of the service that we offer. So we go through that with you and gathering the requirements and putting together the whole package of the layouts, the data, and documentation and training for the institution. So you know, a one-size-fits-all approach is great in theory, but we know that transcripts vary heavily from institution to institution. So while we have a starting point, we're not starting from scratch. We are doing requirement gathering with you all to make sure that we really have all of your needs taken into account and aren't producing something that's cookie cutter, that doesn't quite fit the institution's needs.
Thanks, Carter. Another question. How have your clients reacted to this new transcript format versus what's available in AMU tenants?
I mean, the response that we've gotten so far has been, you know, pretty positive, and excitement, you know, especially around the ability to tailor the transcript to different audiences. And one customer that we're working with them on a variety of different formats of the transcript. So depending on who's requesting it, while it might be all the same information, it's arranged differently, or even, you know, has different information contained on it. For example, on an official transcript, we might want to suppress the GPA, but when faculty is looking at the transcript, that information might be relevant, so we display it. And, you know, the ability to do that and offer this as something that's audience driven instead of, again, one size fits all, you know, we're able to really meet the needs of all the constituents of the institution instead of some of the constituents and some of the needs.
Okay, another question. Do I need a Workday Prism license for this?
No, you do not need a Prism license. We have the ability to work with the data outside of Prism, but I think anybody that's looked at Prism knows that in terms of the institution's data needs overall, Prism's a really good fit. I'm not here to advertise Prism or sell it for Workday. That's on them to do that. But I mean, my recommendation always is if you have the ability to add a Prism license to your Workday environment, that it for student customers, it really makes a big difference. And so we can work without Prism, short answer, but it's definitely, I just recommend it overall for student reporting needs.
Another question, is it safe to say in order to have a newspaper style transcript layout, Workday Studio and Prism are the tools needed for this solution?
Workday Studio, yes, but as I tried to articulate in the last question, you do not need Prism. It's just recommended, and that's really recommended overarching for Workday Student.
Great. What's the recommendation from Avaap on the deployment of this solution, either during the initial deployment or as part of a subsequent phase?
Hey, Abby, this is Josh. I can take that one. So it's really just going to depend on project by Workday Student project by project. So what I mean by that is if your institution is planning to go live for fall registration, generally that happens in the springtime. We've seen institutions where their preference is to finish out the spring term in their legacy system. As a result, they'd be running transcripts in their legacy system. So those are cases where they're actually not generating transcripts from Workday until after their go live. And traditionally, if you're talking about go live for fall registration, that happens in the spring area. So they went, I've seen some institutions not generate transcripts out of Workday until as late as August. So in terms of delivery, there's some leeway where this kind of offering can be configured after your spring go live. In other cases, institutions want to get this all buttoned up as part of the spring go live, even if they're not going to be using it in spring, in which case it's deployed during the actual student implementation.
Thanks, Josh. One last question. How long does something like this typically take?
So I can take that. It really depends on what the requirements are and us to get together with you to figure out what those are. If you have questions or interest, I would advise reaching out to us so we can have a conversation in more depth to get into that.
Thanks, Carter. With that, I think we've answered all of the questions. If there are any questions, you are always more than welcome to reach out to our student team, or you can reach out to info@avaap.com and somebody will connect you with our student team and they will happily help figure out a solution for you. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate it and have a great rest of your day.